It's time to give the devil his due. Daredevil stars Ben Affleck, Jennifer Garner, Colin Farrell, and is directed by Mark Steven Johnson. So recently we reviewed X-Men Origins Wolverine, and I had a lot of fun with that one. And last night I watched the Ben Affleck movie Daredevil, the director's cut. And I really enjoy this movie, and I thought, hey, let's go ahead and do a review for that one, because that one to me is kind of an underrated, sometimes really just trashed superhero movie. And Daredevil happens to be one of my favorite comic book characters. I just love so many aspects of Daredevil, especially Frank Miller's version. Also, before I get into this review, let me just mention the Daredevil TV show. I love it so much. It's gotten a lot of things right, and I just saw the trailer for season 2. Let me just say, wow, that is gonna be amazing. I love what they're doing with this. The Punisher's gonna be in it. It's gonna be great. But anyway, on to the review. So after the massive success of Spider-Man, studios really wanted to try some other comic book properties, and one of the first out the gate was Daredevil. And I remember I was really excited for this movie because, like I said, I've always been a really big Daredevil. He's sometimes known as the poor man's Spider-Man, or even the poor man's Batman. But I believe there are aspects of the character Daredevil that are even more interesting than the two counterparts. And this is an origin story, and I think it's told quite well. The story is Matt Murdock, he was a child. His father was a famous boxer, and he grew up in the slums of Hell's Kitchen, and eventually his father becomes a washed up prize fighter, and he has to become a loan shark, and he keeps all this from his son. And so one day, Matt Murdock discovers this, and an accident happens, and he gets this toxic waste or radioactive waste splashes in his eyes, and he becomes blind. And that is one thing that I find so interesting about the character Daredevil. Unlike any other comic book character, he is disabled. He cannot see. And in essence, that becomes his superpower because all his other senses are extremely heightened. And his hearing becomes so heightened that it becomes sort of a sonar sense to where he can actually see through the vibrations of the sounds that everybody makes. And I gotta say, I really enjoy that whole origin story aspect of it. And I like the whole montage that they use to show Matt Murdock's progression. As a child, he starts training himself on the rooftops and eventually becoming Daredevil. And the reason he becomes a Daredevil is really similar to the story of Batman. His father is killed because he himself is living a life of crime. And so Matt Murdock takes it upon himself to kind of avenge his father's death, but really rid the streets of Hell's Kitchen from all the injustices. And let me just say, one thing I love about this movie is the look of it. I think it's the only Marvel movie that has kind of a gothic look to it. And there are quite a few scenes that actually resemble The Crow. And Mark Steven Johnson has even mentioned in the commentary that The Crow was a big influence on him. And right at the beginning, you see the church steeple, and Daredevil, he is, injured, and he's hanging on the church steeple. And when you see the camera, panning forward, that scene really resembles the opening scene of The Crow. And also there's another scene where Yurik the reporter, he throws a match on the ground, and the double D in gasoline, lights up in the flames. And again, that's just another scene that is taken right out of The Crow. But I think it works given the character of Daredevil because he is kind of a gothic character. He's really dark, he's edgy, and he kills people. He doesn't hold back whatsoever. And that's another reason why I love this character so much. And one thing I love about Daredevil is it seems like he does all his business at night. And I think given his look, his costume, and a night setting, it just really makes him a more interesting character in my eyes. And I love all those scenes in the aftermath where he is just beaten up and bruised, and you see him pulling his teeth out. It really shows the dark and ugly side of being a superhero. Also, another reason why the director's cut is so great is because the action, the fight scenes, the choreography it's so much better. It's like in the theatrical cut, they just left a lot of that out, especially in the bar scene. When Daredevil's just sitting on top of the ceiling fan, and then he comes down and he just starts whipping the shit out of everybody. And I love how that scene's filmed because as he's fighting, you kind of see everything from his point of view. even the sound, you hear it like Daredevil would hear it. Now, another thing I like about this movie is that it is taken from Frank Miller's story where Elektra is incorporated. And I'm going to get into a little bit of spoiler talk here, so if you haven't seen Daredevil, you might want to stop it because this is kind of a big spoiler. So anyway, here we go. There's a scene on the rooftops, and it is taken directly out of the comic book. There's a scene between Bullseye and Elektra, and the scene is filmed and shot pretty much frame by frame, just like in Frank Miller's comic book, even down to the way that Bullseye kills her. And one thing I found so interesting about Elektra's character is that later in the movie, she has a vendetta against Daredevil because she believes Daredevil actually killed her father, when in fact it was Bullseye that killed her father. So that really ratchets up the drama in this movie. And finally, I want to talk about Ben Affleck. More often than not, people say that Ben Affleck didn't do a good job in this movie. And when Affleck was announced as Batman, I remember there was just this massive outcry. Everybody was saying, no, there's no way that Ben Affleck could play Batman. And I'm not gonna lie, I had my doubts too. Even though I've always said I thought Ben Affleck was a great Daredevil. And after rewatching this again last night, I really liked Ben Affleck's performance. I think he did a great job as Daredevil, actually. But if you remember, Ben Affleck had quite a few years where he was just pumping out a lot of crap. And I think that might have bled on to the perception of him playing Daredevil. When in fact, I think he did a great job actually playing Daredevil. And I think he's gonna be a great Batman as well. And also, I'll make a quick note of the music in this movie. I love the soundtrack, especially if you're into rock music. It's one of the better rock soundtracks out there, and all the songs are incorporated really well into the movie. And I think it just really adds a good flow to the whole movie because they don't overuse the music like they can do in some movies, but I think the music is strategically placed perfectly all the way through. Now, Daredevil isn't a perfect movie. There are a few things that bothered me. One thing that bothered me about the director's cut was I didn't think that the whole subplot with Coolio being accused of murdering the prostitute needed to be in there. To me, it really still kind of made the story drag. But overall, the director's cut is still a much better version because there are some added scenes in there that are much better. They even change a few scenes, like in the theatrical cut, there's a love scene between Daredevil and Elektra, and that is completely taken out of the director's cut because Matt Murdock is having this kind of sensual scene with Elektra, but he hears all the crime in Hell's Kitchen in the background, and then he says, I have to go. I cannot be here. I have to go be Daredevil, basically. Also, I wasn't the biggest fan of Michael Clarke Duncan as Kingpin in this movie. To be honest, he really doesn't do that much. He just has a few scenes here and there, and then the big fight at the end. But I thought Vincent D'Onofrio from the TV series was a much better Kingpin. But overall, guys, I would say that Daredevil Director's Cut, to me, it's a purchase worthy. I think it's a really good movie, and there's even some great moments in it. So anyway, guys, what are your thoughts on Daredevil? Looking forward to hearing them. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to my channel, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and Drumdum out.